Vanessa Pirotta, Dr Vanessa Pirotta, che seguo da parecchio tempo su Twitter, X, e c'è stato qualcosa di recente che mi ha spinto finalmente ad invitarla e fortunatamente ha detto di sì e da come ha lo sguardo penso che mi sta capendo. Hi Vanessa, thanks for coming on to Radio Italia 1 Adelaide.
Ciao, thank you so much. Grazie tante.
Oh, excellent. So we'll continue in Italian now. Yeah.
If I can do it.
Just a bit later on. So I was just saying, I've been following you and enjoying your posts on Twitter, now X, quite a while, and you do things around Wales. But just very recently, something special occurred. You were listed as a finalist for the Eureka Awards, very prestigious awards run out through the Australian Museum. Tell us a little bit about that and why they nominated you.
Grazie. The Eureka Awards are like the Oscars of the science world. And for the category that I was nominated for, it was all about recognizing my work, promoting understanding of science. So being a science communicator, talking about the whales, talking about how Australians and maybe Italians can better understand the ocean and what that means for us going forward, making decisions about how we look after the marine environment and how my knowledge and information can help transform that knowledge in Australian public, but also so then we can be better informed to make good choices in the future for protecting whales, the marine environment, and what we do in it.
Yes, I repeat, the category you were nominated for was the understanding of science, which is very, very important. Communicating the science to the community at large has great importance. And as you were just introducing that topic now, I remember having my first conversation with a gentleman called Tullio Rossi, who also I think is connected to you on Twitter, and he was doing research on, I think, shrimp and the impact of climate change on the environment in the oceans. Is that going to affect whales as well?
Yes, climate change is a very, very big thing. And for those who might need a refresher, climate change is talking about the challenges that we as humans present for the environment. There has been natural changes over time, but because we're producing a lot of emissions through our cars, aeroplane right now over me, this makes the earth very, very warm. And that means a lot of our gases are trapped in the atmosphere. And so for whales, this may mean we might see sea ice in Antarctica melt, which is bad news for a whale that uses, or I should say that really enjoys eating Antarctic krill. So whales also are a really good indicator of any changes that might be going on in the environment. So we can study whales or shrimp or krill to learn more about these changes. And a whale is really large and often shows us things that we might not necessarily be aware of. So that's why it's an incredible thing to learn more about, but also as our world continues to change in light of climate change.
Yes, okay, so whales can be a good way to understand what's happening. And you said they're big, so does that make it easier to study them or easier to see them and to find them?
You would think being the size of a bus, these
Yes.
animals are massive. If you're in your car right now, they're as wide as your car. They're huge, but they spend most of their time underwater and they move. So seeing them can be quite tricky. So it's still very mysterious. And that's why I wrote my book, Humpback Highway, diving into the mysterious world of whales, because funny enough, we don't actually know much about them.
Yes. And you wrote a book, Humpback Highway.
Yes, that's right.
I've read you also write books for children.
Correct. Yes.
About whales as well?
Of course. Okay. So
my
whole idea of being a scientist and an early career researcher is to make the information accessible. So my first children's book is The Voyage of Whale at Calf. And the idea around that was to essentially go, okay, here's a resource for children to understand why the whales are here and what they're doing and why they migrate to Antarctica to feed and why they travel to Australia to have their babies. And then I created the same version of that, but in a book for teenagers and also adults called Humpback Highway. And then my second or my third book all up is another children's book, and that's about oceans at night, and tells us all the amazing things that happens when your little ones go to sleep and what happens in the ocean as the night goes on and we go deeper, and then as the day starts, I should say, the depth component goes more shallow. So it's an incredible opportunity to share some of the science that I do, but through a storytelling opportunity.
So at night?
It's called Oceans at Night, Humpback Highway, and The Voyage of Whale and Calf. But the good thing is that if you forget any of these names, I have a website and we can link to that later on as well.
Yes, vanessapirotta.com.
That's right.
So at night, what, do the whales go deeper into the ocean?
Well, there are but some species of whales naturally will dive deeper because that's where their food sources are. So, for example, the sperm whales, these are really big creatures that have teeth, and they will dive deep down to find things like giant squid, and it's dark down there, and they use sound, so, and echolocation, which is biological sonar. So they can dive whenever they like, but generally we have creatures that being marine mammals, they may sleep at night, or they might take the opportunity to feed. It's very variable, but being a mammal like you and I, they may follow the same routines that we like to do. Or in some cases, dolphins, for example, some populations are known to feed early in the morning, and then when the sun rises, they take the time to stretch out and have a bit of a rest.
Now, I'm pretty sure, watching you now on Zoom, I'm sure you do podcasts, yeah, and videos about the stories, because you're a very good storyteller, I think.
Oh, thank you. Well, I share a lot of my research with people in different platforms. I do not have my podcast, but some of the work that I do is presenting the information on different platforms. So I've been very fortunate enough to have been on Play School, sharing knowledge with young minds, which is just wonderful. And it's so great too, because I have my own children as well, so they get to see and understand a little bit more about what I do as a scientist.
Okay, and you said that the whales visit Australia, that's to have their little ones?
Yes, correct.
And I see you tell us when they're swimming past Sydney or through the harbour.
Yes.
Is it in our winter time? Yes, because they come down to South Australia as well.
Yes, so in South Australia, you have the luxury of seeing both mainly southern right whales, which are not humpback whales, and they will congregate in South Australian waters and just hang out there. They sometimes come up north past Sydney, but typically it's the humpback whale that goes along the east and the west coast in large numbers, and then down south you've got the beautiful southern right whales that hang out, with only a handful here, and they go left and right, so to speak. And these creatures, again, are doing something similar to the humpback whales. They're there to have their young and be in a nursery. Lots of southern right whales enjoying the warmer waters, which in comparison to Antarctica are very much warmer. But we are currently documenting information which suggests that humpback whales are having their calves a lot further south than they would in those traditional breeding grounds, like that of the Kimberley or northern Queensland waters. So we're seeing young calves on the east coast being born as far south as Tasmania, and then making that migratory journey all the way up to Queensland to enjoy the warm waters.
Okay, so it's getting a bit too hot for them.
Potentially, or are we just better at documenting this as scientists?
Yeah.
I suspect that there's probably a combination of a few things, but the fact that we do have evidence of warming oceans and tropical species being found all the way down in places like Tasmania does suggest that we are seeing this movement of warmer waters expanding and extending further south than what they really should be, because we don't want too much change. In fact, we're trying to stop the changes that climate change presents. So we want to ensure that we don't change the ocean too much, because this might have flow-on effects literally for how certain species interact with the marine environment and the roles that they play.
Yeah, and you mentioned krill. Reminded me, many years ago, I worked in the Prime Minister's department, and the then Prime Minister, Bob Hawke, encouraged letters from young people and children And on one occasion, I had to draft a response to this letter by a boy that said, stop them fishing krill. Whales eat krill. I love whales. That was the letter.
Wow.
And he got a response, this boy, signed by the Prime Minister at the time. And part of the answer was whales can swim a long way and get food. But based on what you're saying, I'm wondering, is their diet possibly having to change?
Well, the thing that we're documenting, and first of all, that story is very special, and I'm so glad he got a response. What we're seeing here through whale presence and their numbers and drone observations is that whales are known to feed in Australian waters, but it's becoming an annual occurrence that we're seeing a lot of whales feeding in Australian waters,
Right.
which may suggest that perhaps Australian waters are serving as a supplementary feeding ground. So perhaps the whales are here because, well, not only are they migrating and doing their thing, reproducing, but they're taking the chance to go, hey, there is good food here, the manjade over here, come on, this is good. And so we're going to take the opportunity to eat, and then go to Antarctica and eat down there as well, providing that there is hopefully a lot of krill down there.
So presumably they're eating other things other than krill around Australia.
So Antarctic krill is their main, the humpback whale in Australia is their main food source. But yes, other creatures like small fish, tiny sardines, that kind of thing would definitely be part of the diet.
Why small fish? They're such huge animals. They could eat anything.
Oh, funny, it's one of the biggest creatures on Earth, sometimes consume, well, most of the time consume some of the smallest. And for your listeners that don't know what krill are like, they're like the tiny, they look like a prawn. They're really, they're maybe 3 to 5 centimeters long, lots of them. The esophagus of a whale is not really large, so they can't fit you and me through there. So they're basically designed to be big gulf feeders where they can trap a lot of water and a lot of prey, like a ball of lots of prey, lots of krill in one area or fish, and then gobble it up and eat lots of it. So if you're a really big animal, it doesn't necessarily mean that you eat big food. You just eat lots of smaller food.
Lots of smaller food. And I hear they just swim through the ocean, open their lips, so to speak, and just draw everything through.
They'll open their mouths really wide, and then they'll expand their throats like an accordion. I know a lot of Italians know what an accordion is. And then my nonno used to play once when I was little. And then they'll engulf the water, and then they'll engulf their prey, and then they'll shut. And then they'll use their baleen plates, which are hair-like plates around their mouth, lift their tongue to the roof of their mouth, and then expel the water and then swallow their prey, and that's how they eat.
Oh, okay. Wonderful explanation of that. So you were saying, you're talking about your research, your writing. I see you talk about the whales swimming past Sydney. Where do you do this? Who are you affiliated?
Where am I watching whales in Sydney? Who am I sharing this information with? So I'm watching a lot of what I do off Sydney occurs a few areas. We call the narrow migratory corridor where we can see whales just off Sydney, the Humpback Highway. So a lot of my work, like for example, this morning, I was very privileged to see humpback whales going north, which is really late in the season, and some going south back to Antarctica. And that was just from the beautiful headland just at Bondi Beach there. And then a lot of, it was spectacular. The sun was rising. The whales are breathing, because when they breathe, they go, taking a big breath of air. They've got 2 nostrils like us, but they're moved to the top of their head like a snorkel. And these creatures are just enjoying I call it the blue backyard. And then a lot of the work that I do is also down in Botany Bay, down in Gamay, which is the First Nations word for the area of Botany Bay down there. And I'm working with Indigenous knowledge holders known as the Gamay Rangers. And together we're learning more about monitoring sea country and the creatures like marine mammals, whales, dolphins, and seals, La Foca, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of them there, and we're learning more about that area. So my work is very connected both within Sydney Harbour and along the Humpback Highway, focused on marine mammals, whales, dolphins, fur seals, so we can better understand where they occur and how we can best protect them.
Interesting. So that Indigenous knowledge that you're accessing can add substantial amount of data that we can't measure, and maybe, well, you'd have to maybe publish in different ways, but it's a very useful knowledge to have.
It is very useful, and also in the science world, we are navigating as scientists of how to work with First Nations or Indigenous knowledge holders, and likewise, they've got all this information as well, and they're also navigating this new world of the collaboration or the merging between. And I'm assuming that in the future it will just be something that we don't even give a thought to, we just do it. And so it's all about building genuine partnerships, and through storytelling that Indigenous knowledge holders have, it's phenomenal. It's very empowering, but also we can look back to then reflect on the past, and then going forward, bringing that knowledge and that respect in as well of elders in the community, and just like nonnals and nonnas.
Yes, important. And well, on that note, let's talk about your Italianness. I said that Pirotta is an Italian name, but
yes.
Is it? Yes.
Well, it is, but my last name Pirotta is Maltese. So my father's Maltese and my mum's side is from Avellino outside of Napoli. So that's my Italian connection, both Maltese and Italian. And so my mum's family came over when she was very young, and my mum was born in Melbourne and my dad was born in Malta, and he came over. So both from migrant families from Europe.
Yeah, okay. And did you, well, Maltese, a lot of Maltese do speak Italian. So
that's correct.
What language or languages were spoken in the household as you were growing up?
Well, there was a lot of Maltese spoken because of my nonna, and she could also speak Italian. So my nonna she's in Melbourne, but she still can't really speak English very well. So she still is a fantastic Italian speaker, much like your listeners. And unfortunately, when my mum was a little girl, she used to get teased for speaking Italian at school. So my mum and dad never wanted the challenges that they faced at school for me. So unfortunately, that's why I'm not bilingual fluently.
Yeah, but you've been picking things up and the occasional word here and there. So have you visited Italy?
I have. I visited Avellino, where my mum's family's house is, which was beautiful. Napoli, then Rome. I've also been to Firenze. Beautiful spots. Beautiful cities. Italy is so beautiful. And the best thing I love about it is obviously the food, but you can just walk around and you can buy pizza at any time of the day. I love it. And then I also had the most amazing experience through my marine career by going to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization in Rome as a representative or a delegate for a marine mammal international meeting looking at bycatch. So sometimes marine mammals are caught in fishing gear, and just ways to try and assist this better internationally. So that was probably one of the most amazing experiences that I had, both from a scientific perspective, but also from a cultural perspective, which was just brilliant. And of course, I have my Italian passport as well. So it's very much an opportunity for me to embrace that side of my heritage.
Beautiful. And as you were saying, Malta has a beautiful harbour as well, going into a later. Yes, yeah. And you just reminded me that the issue of fishing whales, how is it still a sensitive topic? Why can't we, or why are most countries trying to stop or regulate the fishing of whales?
Yes. So whaling is, for many species, was the #1 threat to them. And now that fortunately I believe 3 countries in the world still do it occasionally, but the majority of us has stopped. And that's a good thing, because now that we've stopped killing whales, or some populations at least, like the humpback whale, their numbers are doing quite well. And so it's a good thing. But we still have species like the southern right whale that you would see near Adelaide. Their numbers post-whaling have not recovered as well. So they still have a number of challenges to go through, just like the humpback whales. But humpback whales are able to have a baby every 2 to 3 years, or in some cases every single year. Whereas a southern right whale, they can have a baby every 3 to 5 years. So a longer interval, their recovery post being killed is not really gone as well as the humpback whale in Australian waters.
So the fishing nowadays is still done in Japan? Is it Finland?
Norway.
Norway.
And so and places like that. a lot of there is a combination of commercial whaling,
Yeah.
so killing whales to make money from it, and also subsistence, I can't ever say the word, or cultural whaling, to uphold cultural values.
Yeah. Okay. So that's an ongoing issue.
It's something that I talk about in my book, Humpback Highway, but it's also, I would say that with a lot of challenges that are presented for whales, so even be ship strike or entanglement with fishing gear, noise pollution, it's all about trying to find ways around these issues by not finger pointing, but rather working collectively, collaboratively. So understanding why some people want to do these things and how we can better manage this, or at least try and, for whaling, alleviate it. Obviously, I'm anti-whaling, but trying to find ways that if we have fishing gear entangling whales, well, for some people, that's their livelihoods. How can we then work with people and also scientists, authorities, to find solutions to try and minimize the risk of entanglement, or at least find ways that we can try and stop the entanglement risk being there in the first place. So it's a big thing, a big topic.
Yes. Now, for people that might want to find the book, your children's book, can you remind us your website, and maybe then from there people can go maybe to bookstores?
Yes.
Bookstops.
Yes, absolutely. So vanessapirotta.com, VANESSAPIROTTA.com. And there's all my books, but I know Humpback Highways in Big W. You also have any really good bookstore has my books, Oceans at Night, as well as The Voyage of Whale and Calf. So books for all ages.
Oh, okay. Remember the name, Vanessa Pirotta, and that should be easy to find, whether doing a Google search or going into the bookstores for that. Okay, well, thank you very much, Vanessa, for that energetic and enthusiastic presentation, and best wishes for the future of your career.
Grazie tante.